Yeah! Part 2. Coming in hot. Time to have some fun. Picking up the interview where we left off. The third question we asked ourselves was this. Was this harder than we thought? And yeah, we're clearly leading up to that.
Yeah.
Yes, this was harder than we thought. This was going against the grain of essentially pretty much anything that I had tried to do as an artist up to this point. So, you know, you've taken away my main tools, which is a loud, down-tuned, distorted guitar, which you got to witness in Guy Wolf.
Right.
And thumping bass and blasting drums to, you know, flutes and little whimsical sounds and harps and these different things. And so my mind had to approach the way that I orchestrated multiple instruments, mind you, haphazardly and very basic, but still I did. And just kind of changing how I approach my music in any other regards. So in what ended up happening to you? What was the thing that is like, man, this is harder?
What was weird for me was not, so the settings was a little bit of a, like creating the setting that the universe sits in. I had a really strong idea of that. So that wasn't so much, there was some perspective issues and things like that were just really technical that I was having problems with, but that's not something I'm a stranger to working through. What got me was the characters of the two little girls, is because that's where I realized where my abstraction that comes with creating a comic book looking person to something that isn't like, because I do, you know, comic book looking things, or I do like hyper realistic portraiture, like for fun, like I do that. But there's a really fine line where that needle swings, where you can have something that's like a gentle, realistic looking character without it looking too abstract, but also not looking so realistic that it doesn't fit the environment of being a character in a storybook or something like that. So that's where like a lot of the gentleness of the things I was using, so rather than using like hard lines, I started using graphite lines and style like oil pastels to color in rather than like solid blocks of color and things like that. The softness of it came with just changing the actual tools I was using. But the thing that actually got hard for me was trying to find that balance of how abstract can you make, you know, this child's eyes look without making it look like just any other kid, you know, like it actually looking like who it's supposed to look like, but also not making it look so realistic that it looks like I'm just, you know, there's these realistic people, almost like you remember Mary Poppins when they go into the chalk paintings?
I've never seen.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm still gonna explain it to you.
That's fine.
And there's a scene in Mary Poppins where Dick Van Dyke he's a chimney sweep, and they spend a whole day like he does in his free time. He just chalk like drawings on the ground, and they're like these huge elaborate things. And so as a day of fun, they all jump in one and like spend time. So everything in that universe is like cartoons. Like there's some cartoon waiter penguins that come out, and he like yanks his pants down so that his feet look like he's got the waddle to his walk, and then he like dances with them and stuff like that. Super funny. But it's like they're real people and they're existing in this like cartoon universe. Right. And that's what it was like starting to almost feel like once I realized it was like, okay, I don't want them to look like little anime children existing in like a watercolor world, which is what it looked like initially. And that just didn't fit. It started then looking like that, like Dick Van Dyke dancing with cartoon penguins in a chalk drawing, like, and then I was like, I don't like that either, because that has a real like Who Framed Roger Rabbit feel.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. So you should have just said.
I'm so sorry. I could have cut to the chase with that one and we'd have been on the same page. But yeah, and so like that was for me where it was really difficult, because I didn't realize that as an artist I either was dramatically in this arena of like realism or dramatically in this arena of abstraction, and to find that little balancing point of where I needed to be for this specific project, to me was like I was like pulling out my hair.
It became a challenge. That's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. Huh. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I like that.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I like that. There's a lot of good information, and yeah, clearly we got the job done.
Yeah.
So moving on from that, the fourth question we asked ourselves was, why did we reboot this project? So we got part of the way through filming this and creating content, and you hinted at that when you said that the first pass at the characters were initially just giving us the artistic vibe and feeling and look that we really didn't want to go for. Like you just said, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, or some kind of obscure saying from some movie. I don't know what that Mary Poppins, I've never seen. No, but from the that iconic movie Mary Poppins, and so it moved from that to becoming more like the Pooh Bear thing. So yeah, we went back to the drawing board on this, had to have some meetings about it. At this point in the stage of the project, I didn't really reboot my music, but what happened to me is that, and I don't want to move from your point of your rebooting, so we're going to come back to that, but while I'm still just talking, blabbering on, I'll get my point of it out of the way. I didn't really reboot it, but I had like an awakening in the middle of working on the music. So I went from a mindset of with the Guy Wolf project, it was very much came from the age of that like 80s and 90s style cartoons that we grew up watching in early 2000s, where it had very distinct themes, and you play video games and they have very distinct themes for all the characters in it. That was really easy for me to get into because I could really get into that. Well, this was like part of the way through, and I started to make these individual songs in that same way for the different characters and how they would be represented on the screen. But eventually I came to a point where it was like, well, wait a minute, I need to look at it as creating like an audio experience so that it has its own color palette, like I mentioned to you the last week when I started to think about that, its own set of instruments that represents certain characters and activities, and more so like that. So instead of having like a distinct melody or set of notes that's reoccurring that kind of holds everything together, like when I was creating themes for Guy Wolf, and as I will continue to do for other projects in a similar vein, this is more about creating that landscape portrait but with music.
Right.
And when I had that awakening in this mid-project, I just opened a floodgate of inspiration. And so that's how I work, which is cool, is sometimes it's difficult for me to get to that point creatively. But when I do, it's like your water main to your house broke, and now you have more than enough to deal with, and sometimes information overload, or content or information overload, however you want to look at that.
Right.
I have the tendency to give myself that problem sometimes. And that's where I'm at with this. But because I've got a little more miles on me, I can control that overflow a little bit better than I used to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where I am all of a sudden when we went through this rebooting phase. When you went back to the drawing board, I had an awakening that was like, I'm at the same drawing board, but it's just with so much better direction. But anyways, your perspective on that was you were looking at the challenge of recreating all of the character models that you had done to this point.
Yeah.
So what was going on here? Like, why did we reboot it, and what did this process look like for you?
So for me, it was, in all honesty, a lot of the times when I'm doing this stuff by myself and I hit this point in a project, it's really discouraging. And I, like a lot of drawings that I end up here with, I end up just like crumpling and never touching again. But wanting to actually keep moving forward with projects is something that as you grow as an artist, and it's always nice to have somebody to encourage you to keep going like you did. But I basically literally went back to the drawing board and I was like, okay, for me, I had to literally like just peel back. It's almost like, I literally built something. I put up a wall of, framework, then I insulated it, put drywall up, painted it, and then realized that I forgot to, screw the the framework in properly. So I had to take the, paint, drywall, take the insulation out, and then rework on the frame. That's basically what I do with my drawings is I had to go back to the setting that I was putting everything in. Peel everything back to what literally the base of every page of a storybook is the setting. So I went back to what is, the tree house. What's the inside of that look like? We had talked about that a lot too. What's this like? And my using that information and how I decided to deal with, say, making a tree look both abstract but realistic. Taking the same kind of like mindset of that and then applying it to the characters. So not only that they felt cohesive as like a design, but also felt like they fit in the same universe. I wasn't just sticking Dick Van Dyke in a chalk drawing,
Yeah. It'd be pretty weird if you showed up in our book.
But yeah, so that's basically what I did is I went back to literally the drawing board and I kind of set everything aside that I had done and then just restarted with, rather than using like really like ink pens, and stuff like that, things that make bold, expressive lines. I used like, sketch pencils, and I let those be like more of the final lines of it, so that it had that feeling of softness. And then whenever I colored it in, I didn't like block fill it and then shade it. I literally like colored it in. Like I'm on my iPad, but I'm coloring it in with a pastel brush that is, like I'm coloring. I'm not like using the feature where I just block color. I'm actually coloring it in the old-fashioned way, and actually doing that and creating that setting. Then I was able to say, okay, what would an imaginary robot friend look like in that universe? How would you make a hamster that both looked like a character you could talk to, but also look like he would be a hamster that you would find around this tree or something like that? And so like then peeling it all the way back to like the very bones of what I had started with, and then coming at it with new tools, and new tools and a clearer mindset is how I started rebuilding the little universe.
It's pretty cool. And so what's neat is, and I'm starting to notice another parallel.
Yeah.
You had to peel it back to your setting, to your landscape, to your, and I had to go to the soundscape.
Yep.
So again, we're having this parallel going on, and this is becoming fascinating. Now, we didn't intend to really hit on that, but I think that it's neat that that's coming out organically
really
while
cool.
we're going on to this.
I think that's awesome.
Did you like part 2? We did. Stick around for part 3. It's coming next week. Until then, stay cool. Yeah!